Hear this because religion has created an environment where they have attacked the Lilith energy of creation. So the Bible does speak of different gods, and even in Genesis 127, it says in plural that gods, basically plural gods, created humanity in their image, and that was a plural. It was before there was an introduction of this so called Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But I want you to hear this concerning the Lilith energy because I have always been attuned to this Lilith energy in the fact that um, the patriarchy has always demonized the Lilith energy, and they have always tried to create an environment in religious texts to vilify the Lilith energy. But I want you to hear this. I'm going to start from scratch and I'm going to play this, and I want you to hear this.
People think they're reacting to her, but they're not. They're reacting to what her energy reveals. When Black Moon Lilith is active like it is right now, she amplifies the parts of a woman that are hardest for others to look at. Her clarity, her certainty, her refusal to shrink just to keep the peace. This transit makes her instinct sharper, her presence louder, her truth impossible to ignore.
Lilith
And
is
that's
the
exactly why some
embodiment
people act
of the
strange around
power
her.
of the divine
Her energy
energy.
lights up the areas they've avoided, denied, or suppressed within themselves. She doesn't expose their shadows intentionally. Lilith just has a way of turning the lights on without warning. She doesn't provoke them. She doesn't antagonize them. The Lilith frequency flowing through her does, effortlessly.
Mhm.
They didn't expect her to glow. They thought pushing her down would make her disappear, fade, or shrink into the silence they tried to force on her. But Lilith doesn't respond to suppression with submission. She responds with radiance. When someone aligned with this energy is mistreated, especially now with Black Moon Lilith active, she doesn't just survive the harm, she becomes more visible because of it. Her presence sharpens. Her essence becomes harder to ignore. Not because she's trying harder, but because life starts amplifying her signal. This isn't some fluffy comeback story. It's energetic law. She
Karma.
rises louder in the places they swore she'd vanish from. There's something about trying to erase a woman aligned with Lilith that only makes her imprint deeper. Her confidence becomes contagious. Her clarity becomes undeniable. And the very people who wanted her gone become the silent witnesses of her rise. And that's what haunts them. Because deep down, they know they didn't just lose her. They lost their chance to ever meet her again in that form. Some people don't regret what they did. They regret that it didn't break you. The discomfort they feel watching her grow is not guilt alone. It's the realization that they participated in a fall that never happened. She's still rising, and now they're just watching from the outside, with no invitation back in.
King Shot is a tower defense game that uses tactics to build, defend, and fight. There are literally no ads. It's nothing.
People think consequences show up as lightning. Instant, loud, impossible to miss. But with Lilith energy, the price is paid in silence. Slowly, quietly. Divine favor doesn't slam the door. It leaves it open just long enough for someone to dishonor it again and again, until one day, it's simply gone. When someone mistreats a woman aligned with Lilith, especially in a time like this, it's not just a personal conflict. It's a spiritual fracture. Honor is the bridge between favor and flow. Break it, and everything changes. Opportunities stop making sense. Doors that used to open begin to hesitate. The clarity they once had starts to feel.
This is the crazy part about these different religions that have vilified the Lilith energy or Lilith himself herself is that these are the same people that will use the female divine energy, like Mother Mary and things like that, or these different goddesses, and they will use these women and their bodies and all these different things to be able to get their wishes done, their desires done, and their fulfillment of the things that they personally want. They use this energy, these males do, these religious male dominated religions do. They use the Lilith energy, they use the goddess energy to get what they want, but they give no credit back to the divinity of this woman, or the Lilith energy, the black Lilith energy of the woman.
Foggy. They feel stuck, but can't trace where the blockage began. And it's not because she cursed them. It's because they chose to dishonor what was divinely aligned. And favor, real favor, doesn't stay where truth isn't respected. The thing about Lilith energy is it doesn't fight back with destruction. It steps away. And what leaves with her isn't just her presence. It's the blessing that came with it. They don't realize what they've lost until the silence gets too loud. And by then, the energy has already chosen not to return. When someone harms a woman aligned with Black Moon Lilith, they think they're just acting out of impulse, emotion, or power. They don't realize that the moment they chose to mistreat her, they stepped into a spiritual initiation they were never prepared for. Lilith energy doesn't respond to harm with revenge, it responds with exposure. And the exposure doesn't land on her, it lands on them. This kind of woman doesn't break down the way others expect. She doesn't collapse into weakness, she doesn't become dependent, and she doesn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her shrink. Instead, her resilience forces the other person into a confrontation with their own motives. Suddenly, the question is no longer, why is she like this? But why did I react the way I did? This is the uncomfortable initiation. They become aware of the exact part of themselves they tried to suppress by hurting her. It drags their inner world to the surface in a way they cannot avoid. Their intentions, their impulses, their insecurities, all of it stands in front of them without disguise. Lilith-aligned energy doesn't test her, it tests them. And the test is deceptively simple. Will they admit what they've done? Will they hold themselves accountable? Will they grow from the truth she revealed? Or will they double down, project harder, and spiral into the same patterns that led them to harm her in the first place? Every encounter with a Lilith woman is an invitation to evolve. The question is whether they will rise or resist. This phase is where most people fail. Instead of recognizing the lesson, they fight the mirror. Instead of humility, they choose ego. Instead of healing, they choose avoidance. They think the discomfort they're feeling is a curse, but it's only the beginning of what Lilith energy is about to show them.
Going into the store and seeing that you have to spend like $20 every time you want to get replacement heads, or if...
Stupid ass commercials.
The moment they hurt her, something shifts, not in her, but in them. Lilith energy creates a reflection they didn't anticipate. It shows them the exact version of themselves that they've never been willing to face. And once they see it, there's no going back to the illusion they used to hide behind. This reflection is not gentle. It's not softened by excuses or blurred by denial. It's raw, clear, and unmistakably theirs. They begin to notice traits they always claimed to hate in others, suddenly staring back at them. The insecurity behind their judgment, the jealousy behind their dismissal, the fear behind their anger. It's uncomfortable because it's accurate. She didn't expose them, they exposed themselves through how they treated her. The internal noise starts getting louder. They question their motives, replay their actions, and wrestle with a truth that refuses to leave them alone. Their mind becomes restless in a way they can't escape. Even moments of silence feel charged, like their conscience is echoing back everything they tried to ignore. Their life keeps moving forward, but something inside them doesn't. There's a disruption in the way they perceive themselves. Recognition becomes a burden they didn't ask for. And the more aligned she becomes with her Lilith energy, confident, clear, unbothered, the more fractured their inner narrative becomes. This is the consequence no one talks about. They awaken, but not into clarity. They awaken into themselves, into the parts they never wanted to meet. And that's the price of harming someone who carries this frequency. It's not cosmic punishment, it's inner revelation. A revelation they can't unsee, can't outrun, and can't repair without facing the truth she reflected back to them. And this fracture is only the beginning, because what happens next is where the real shift begins. There's something Black Moon Lilith understands better than any other archetype. Pain is not an ending. It's a redirection. Whenever someone tries to break a Lilith-aligned woman, they assume the impact will slow her down, weaken her, or strip her of her confidence. But the exact opposite happens. The emotional shock becomes a catalyst that sharpens her clarity, upgrades her boundaries, and pushes her into a version of herself she may have never reached without the disruption. Heartbreak for her isn't a collapse, it's an awakening of a different kind. She begins to see what fits and what doesn't with a level of honesty that others often avoid. The illusions she entertained fall apart quickly, leaving behind a foundation built only on truth. And once that truth is exposed, her path becomes unmistakably clear. She stops tolerating half-hearted intentions, manipulative patterns, and environments that dim her light. Pain gives her permission to choose differently. What was meant to break her becomes raw material for elevation. Some wounds don't close, they transform into direction. Her emotional resilience, instead of fading, becomes her anchor. She learns to trust herself more deeply, to listen to the instincts she once doubted, and to move with a level of conviction that can only be forged through experience. This type of pain doesn't destroy her identity, it builds her purpose. And the people who cause the hurt end up witnessing this transformation with growing disbelief. They see her stepping into new alignment, new confidence, new possibilities, and they realize their role in her evolution was never what they intended. Instead of breaking her, they activated the part of her spirit designed to rise.
This is Joette, who loved the dog sitting company she worked for so much, she ended up buying.
Lilith is a frequency more than a gendered symbol. It's the energy of refusal, the energy of defiance against suppression, the energy that appears in anyone who won't shrink themselves to make others comfortable. This is why, during this transit, you'll see Lilith awaken in people across the spectrum. Anyone who has been underestimated, spoken over, controlled, or quietly pushed aside begins to feel that inner fire returning. It's not rage, it's recognition. The realization that their voice, their truth, and their presence were never meant to be minimized. People who carry this frequency tend to stand out without trying. They move differently. They speak with a clarity that others notice immediately. And because their energy is anchored in authenticity, it naturally exposes anything built on insecurity, manipulation, or ego. That's why so many of them become targets. It's not their personality that threatens people, it's their truth. Hurting someone aligned with Lilith is never just an action. It's a confrontation, with their own shadow. The consequence is universal because the dynamic is universal. Lilith energy reflects, it reveals, and it holds people accountable not through punishment, but through truth. Anyone who attempts to silence or suppress a person aligned with this frequency ends up wrestling with the parts of themselves they hoped no one would ever see. Lilith fiercely protects the feminine because it's the realm she governs, but she doesn't stop there. She shields anyone who carries that untamable spark, the ones who refuse to bow, who choose honesty over approval, who stand firm even when standing alone. And that is why the price for harming them is always the same. The truth comes back to the one who caused the harm, in a way they can no longer avoid. What if the biggest plot twist of this Lilith cycle is that no one can dim what was born to rise? While most people focus on the wounds, the betrayals, or the karmic reversals attached to Lilith energy, the real story unfolding in January 2026 is far bigger than any individual situation. Black Moon Lilith isn't just activating consequences, she's activating potential, a level of feminine-coded spiritual strength that isn't reactive, defensive, or tied to what someone else did to her. It's an origin power, a power that existed long before the pain, long before the lessons, long before the world ever tried to shape her. This cycle isn't about the feminine rising because she was hurt. It's about the feminine rising because she remembered herself. Lilith's influence right now is pushing the collective into a phase where feminine energy becomes self-defined, no longer shaped by who rejected her, who misunderstood her, or who underestimated her. She is stepping into a frequency where her identity is authored by her own inner truth, not by the roles the world expected her to play. There's a visible shift happening in people aligned with this current. They're no longer waiting for validation before they move. They're no longer shrinking to make themselves less intimidating. They're no longer apologizing for depth, intensity, or intuition. Instead, they are stepping into the realization that they were never meant to blend in. They were meant to stand out. And this rise is unstoppable because it's not built on emotional reaction. It's built on alignment. True feminine power doesn't awaken because of pain. It awakens because the world can no longer hold it back. During this cycle, those who carry Lilith's essence will naturally gravitate toward bolder choices, clearer boundaries, and a deeper understanding of what their presence actually does to a room, a relationship, or an environment. This isn't about reclaiming power that was taken. It's about accessing power that was dormant, the kind that doesn't need to be proven, only lived. This is why the consequences fall so naturally on those who harm her, not because she demands justice, but because the universe rearranges itself to support someone stepping into their true form. And once the feminine rises in this way, everything around her begins to shift with her. There is a kind of transformation that doesn't break you open. It quietly rearranges you from the inside out. And that's exactly what happens when the moon slips into its shadowed phases, while Black Moon Lilith is active. Most people watch the moon for what they can see, but Lilith isn't in the visible cycle. She's in the invisible one. She speaks in the places where the light doesn't reach, where intuition becomes louder than logic,
Hi,
and where
Queen.
the truth you've been avoiding becomes impossible to ignore. Lilith becomes the moon's secret voice because she doesn't operate through spectacle. She operates through recognition, the recognition of who you are when no one is watching, when no one is validating your growth, when you're forced to confront the difference between the life you maintain and the life you actually want. This phase doesn't reward performance. It rewards honesty. Real, uncomfortable, liberating honesty. This is
Are you there,
why,
Queen?
under this influence, so many people start feeling things they can't quite explain. Not symptoms, but realizations. Sudden clarity about relationships that never truly fed them. A strange resistance to routines they used to tolerate. A growing need for privacy, for boundaries, for emotional autonomy. It's not isolation, it's refinement. Some lunar cycles illuminate your path. This one illuminates your truth. People attuned to Lilith during this phase often experience a shift in their inner dialogue. The voice that once asked, "Is this okay for me?" transforms into, "Why am I still allowing this?" It's not confrontational, it's awakening. What makes this phase especially powerful is that it doesn't require dramatic action. Lilith isn't telling you to burn bridges or reinvent your identity overnight. She's guiding you toward the version of yourself that feels like home. The one that doesn't dilute, doesn't shrink, doesn't negotiate its own truth, just to avoid discomfort. And the people aligned with this energy will feel it in subtle but unmistakable ways. You might notice you're less tolerant of conversations that drain you. You might find yourself resisting old habits without meaning to. You might catch yourself speaking your truth more cleanly without the apology you used to attach to it. These aren't personality changes, they're corrections. Alignment snapping back into place. Lilith is often misunderstood as chaos, but during the moon's shadow phases, she becomes coherence. She pulls everything false to the surface and challenges you to stop pretending you don't see it. And when you finally tell the truth to yourself, not anyone else, something clicks, something reorganizes, something frees you. This is why people feel restless during this transit. Not because something is wrong, but because something inside of them is waking up. The version of you that lives in half-truths can't survive a Lilith moon. The version of you that stands fully in honesty thrives in it.
Exactly.
During the Lilith moon, your soul gets louder than your fear, and once you hear it, you can't unhear it. This is the moon's secret voice. The one that speaks when the world goes silent. The one that knows who you are beneath every mask. And the one that refuses to let you dim yourself any longer. Lilith isn't asking you to rise. She's reminding you that you already were.
I'm gonna have to blow my nose. I just sneezed and my nose is like clogged up.
When people talk about feminine intuition, they usually dress it in vague language, as if it's just sensitivity or emotional fluctuation. But in reality, the connection between the moon and the feminine field is highly practical and deeply rooted in how humans evolved. The moon governs emotional pattern recognition. It shapes how we perceive rhythm, relationships, and behavioral shifts long before the conscious mind registers them. And during a black moon Lilith phase, this system operates on an entirely different level. Feminine-coded souls don't respond to the world through random feelings. They read emotional data the way some people read body language. They detect tension in the air before it turns into conflict. They notice when someone's tone tightens, when presence shifts, when affection cools. Not because they're fragile, but because their emotional intelligence updates faster than spoken communication. That's what the moon amplifies.
Thank you so much, Queen.
The speed at which
Get you some rest.
is processed. She doesn't predict the shift. She recognizes its pattern before it forms. During this specific lunar cycle, the inner landscape becomes incredibly attuned. Boundaries aren't something she thinks about. They adjust themselves. She may pull back from someone or draw closer without being able to explain why, yet that movement is always aligned with something real happening beneath the surface. Silence becomes a signal. Distance becomes information. The tiniest change in consistency becomes a message her system knows how to decode. This isn't about being overwhelmed or emotional. It's about operating through a perceptual framework that prioritizes subtlety. Where others wait for proof, the feminine field evaluates patterns. Where others only trust logic, she trusts resonance. And during the Black Moon Lilith phase, this perceptive ability is heightened, not into chaos, but into precision. What people often misread as sensitivity is actually a sophisticated internal navigation system. It filters intentions, notices energetic mismatches, and highlights emotional inconsistencies. And the fascinating part is that none of this requires conscious effort. It's instinctive, built into the way the lunar field interacts with the feminine psyche. She's not reacting to emotions, she's interpreting information. In this phase, feminine-aligned individuals become almost impossible to deceive. Not because they're suspicious, but because their internal compass sharpens. They feel the truth of a person before the story they tell themselves catches up. They sense which dynamics support their path and which ones drain it, even if nothing dramatic has happened on the surface. This lunar instinct is ancient. It was the first form of survival intelligence long before language evolved. And right now, under Black Moon Lilith, it's reactivating the parts of perception that were never truly lost, just quieted by distraction, social conditioning, and the pressure to appear agreeable. This is why she suddenly seems more decisive, more discerning, more anchored. She isn't becoming cold or distant, she's becoming accurate. She's finally responding to what is, instead of what she hoped something could be. And in that accuracy, she steps into a version of herself that's harder to mislead, easier to align, and completely unwilling to carry connections or commitments that can't match the depth of her perception. Her intuition isn't emotional, it's evolutionary. That is the real essence of the lunar instinct during this cycle. An ancient intelligence resurfacing, recalibrating, and guiding her toward the environments where she thrives and away from everything that dilutes her potential. Lilith's energy is often misunderstood because people project human ideas of revenge onto a force that operates far beyond emotional retaliation. She isn't the archetype that storms in to deliver punishment or force someone to suffer for their choices. Her role is far more intricate and far more transformative. Lilith doesn't destroy lives. She dismantles illusions. She doesn't impose pain. She introduces truth. And truth, when finally faced, becomes its own catalyst for change. When someone acts out of disrespect, manipulation, or dishonor toward a Lilith-aligned soul, the shift that follows isn't a divine blowback, it's an internal reckoning. Something in their perception begins to adjust. They start noticing their motivations more sharply, understanding the impact of their actions in ways they never questioned before.
I found myself at a time in my career where I knew I needed to finish my education. I chose Purdue.
The permission they once gave themselves to act carelessly no longer feels justified, and that shift in awareness becomes the turning point. The cost of harming truth is having to finally live in it. The consequence isn't about creating suffering, it's about confronting the emotional blind spots that allowed the harm in the first place. Old patterns become harder to repeat. Old stories begin to feel hollow, and the persona they once relied on begins to crack under the weight of their own realization. It's not punishment, it's an awakening they didn't expect to face so soon. Meanwhile, the person aligned with Lilith's current moves into an entirely different phase of growth. They aren't waiting for karma to unfold, or for their pain to be acknowledged by someone who couldn't understand it. Instead, They rise into a space where they finally trust themselves, their discernment, and their direction. The weight of trying to be understood dissolves, because Lilith teaches them that clarity is more valuable than validation. There is a quiet empowerment that comes from no longer chasing explanations or rewriting their worth in response to someone else's behavior. Clarity is the moment freedom becomes non-negotiable. This transit frees the feminine field, not by erasing the past, but by updating the emotional compass. Decisions become easier. Boundaries become natural rather than forced. The need to justify or over-explain fades. And the path ahead becomes unmistakably aligned because there's no longer confusion about what deserves to stay in their life. Lilith's cycle always ends with expansion, not destruction, not bitterness, expansion. She ensures that both sides walk away changed, one through accountability and the other through liberation. That's her real gift. She doesn't demand repayment for what was done. She demands evolution from everyone involved. If you're still watching, I'd like to thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed the content and want to see more, please consider clicking the subscribe button.
So there you have it. So I've always had a problem with religions vilifying the Lilith energy, and I knew it always from the beginning to be a lie, coming from organized religions and things like that concerning the Lilith goddess. And to this day, I know what Lilith stands for, and it is definitely not what a misogynistic religion portrays Lilith to be. So I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.